something seemed a little strange right before the music began. Just different, not in a bad way. On March 26, 2026, over 13,000 spectators watched the same sheet of ice inside Prague's O2 Arena. However, not everyone was witnessing the same narrative develop. Because this wasn't just another show, and Ilia Malinin's night wasn't just any old night. Things had gone rather differently a few weeks prior. Round after round, the pressure and expectations increased due to the Olympics. Later on, he acknowledged that it felt heavier than he had anticipated. It was evident not just in the outcomes, but also in the minute details, the reluctance, and the timing that seemed a bit odd. He didn't suddenly pass out. He ended 8th overall, and it happened piece by piece. For someone who remained in the air and was already regarded as the sport's future, we're here now. Same ice, same athlete. However, something has changed. There was more than just excitement when his name was announced in Prague. It was inconsistent. Depending on where you were seated, you might be curious, hesitant, or even doubtful. Would it slip again, or would he deliver this time? This is when things start to get interesting, because there was no leap to the solution. It originated from the way he entered the ice. There's no rush, no dramatic intensity, simply a subdued restraint. If you've seen enough skating, you are aware that the initial few seconds are more important than most people realize. They do more than simply launch the software. They reveal the skater's mental state. There was no discernible stress in his crisp, deep-edged initial glide. However, if you looked closely, you saw restraint rather than hesitancy or fear. Something more regulated than that, such as someone who knew exactly where things had gone wrong in the past and was determined not to do it again. The setup followed. The arena responded even though it didn't first appear particularly noteworthy. Just a minor change in direction and a slight rise in speed. The silent change that occurs when individuals stop moving, whispering, and thinking about anything else was palpable. Because they were aware of the occasion. Everything had previously begun to fall apart at this point. The building held its breath for a moment as he pushed off the ice and shot himself upward from the same position, same buildup, and different result. Not because of the jump per se, but rather because of what it stood for. It was more than just landing this time. It was about responding to all of the previous questions. He nearly immediately reached the top of the jump, which was taller than it appeared on TV. Even before he descended, you could tell by the way the audience responded. When anything feels different, there's usually a little lag. This was one of those times. His body tensed up in the air. Quick rotation, a smooth axis, and no discernible drift. 1, 2, 3, and 4. It was swift yet not hurried. The landing came next. No stumble, no correction, blade down, edge secure. That's when the sound came. Something deeper and louder, a wave rather than a cheer. A kind of response that doesn't require verification. People became aware right away. He didn't simply land it, he became comfortable with it. And considering what transpired at the Olympics, people weren't really watching for the jump itself, so that distinction is more important than most people think. It was what followed. Would he hurry to the next component? Would he remain in the program, or would he attempt to overcompensate? He remained. The part that felt different was that. Just control. No abrupt acceleration, no fear concealed under speed. His shoulders were relaxed and lower than previously, as I recall. A few weeks ago, that wasn't the case. Everything seemed constricted and tighter back then. There was room now, and he put it to use. The edges flowed into steps, steps into turns, and the transitions were organic rather than hurried or forced. He held a glide a little bit longer than anticipated at one point, close to the rink's center. It was delicate. That pause told you everything, even though most people probably missed it. The program was not what he was pursuing. It contained him. And when a skater gets to that stage, the technical aspect practically disappears. It's not easier, it's simply more obvious. The second jumping pass was unexpected. Just a change in direction, no grandiose build-up, no obvious preparation. Then he was in the air once more, and the response was different this time. More anticipation, less stress. Because the audience now thought the landing was as clean, if not cleaner, and he slowed down a little rather than leaping into the following movement. That decision was noteworthy. Difficulty was no longer a factor. It has to do with control. And that's where things began to diverge. From everyone in the field, not simply from his prior performance. Because everyone is able to jump at this level. Few are able to discern when to stop pushing. You could sense it at that very time. This was not healing. It was something else, more subdued and methodical, as if he wasn't attempting to make the past disappear. One step at a time, he was expanding on it. It no longer felt uncertain for the first time that evening. Something had changed in the building by the time he got to the halfway point of the program. There was more than just applause now. It was the kind of attentiveness that unconsciously draws people forward in their chairs. The conversation came to an end. Phones went down. Even the judges, who were normally engrossed in their notes, were paying closer attention now, so the question of whether he would remain upright was no longer relevant. The answer to that query was already known. It was different now. To what extent was he prepared to go? He increased his speed gradually rather than all at once. It was audible through the ice. His blades made a deeper, sharper sound as they cut more forcefully, applying slightly more pressure with each stroke. The entry then appeared, swift and nearly undetectable. After doing a few turns and shifting his weight, he found himself positioned in the middle of the rink. If you've seen enough skating, you are aware of how important alignment is. It denotes dedication. From that position, there is no safe way out. Everything slowed down for a minute as he ascended. Not in terms of appearance. The sensation surrounding it stretched, yet the spinning was quick. Almost too quick to follow clearly. Every now and again, the entire arena holds its breath once more. Because risk never goes away, it reappears even after a clean start. It simply takes on a different form. The rotation was completed without a hitch. Then came the landing once more. No argument, no correction. However, something different occurred this time. For a brief moment, he did not immediately move. He had a steady grip on the edge, his body in perfect alignment, as if he wanted the situation to calm down before moving forward. That wasn't required. That was deliberate. Moments like those are felt by people yet don't appear on score sheets. I realized that this was more than just execution. He was in charge of how the performance was perceived. That's an entirely new level. The choreography then became available. His arms spread out, becoming less restrained. More of the narrative began to be carried by the upper body. Just present, not dramatic, not overdone. He once cast a quick peek in the direction of the audience near the boards, just enough to recognize that link, not explicitly. It's a minor element, yet it counts because everything was internal and inward-looking prior. The energy in the arena changed as it began to expand. It was building again, as you could hear. Not explosive yet, but expanding as if everyone knew something was about to happen, even if they weren't sure what. Additionally, he no longer seemed to be attempting to prove anything in the manner he was skating. He seemed to have made up his mind already. At first, the build-up didn't seem very dramatic. It worked because of that. There was only a slow acceleration that merely merged into the choreography. No dramatic prelude, no pause to indicate what was about to happen. You might miss it if you weren't paying attention. However, the ice revealed it. That crisper sound once more. More pressure, deeper edges. He was speeding directly down the middle, and he didn't hesitate in the slightest this time. Not in the arms, not in the shoulders. Everything lined up. Dedication. The only word that truly suits is that one. As he got closer to takeoff, he leaned back a little. It wasn't an error. It wasn't unstable. It was included in the entry. He then departed from the ice. It didn't even notice what he was doing for a split second. It simply had a different appearance. Then something clicked. A reverse flip. Not what you anticipated this particular moment. Not in a program that was already burdened with so much. The score didn't require it. It was intentional, but it wasn't safe. And that's why the response happened right away. Even before he touched down, you could hear it. Across the arena,